Hey there, oboe players. Today's video is going to be on knife sharpening. You probably already know you need a sharp knife if you want to make a great reed. So let's get into some of the details. I've recently been sharpening my knives with a set of 3D printed angle guides, and they've been very successful for me. This video is going to be on how to use the angle guides and how to choose the right guide for your knife. I'm going to be demonstrating today on two knives. One is an Albion knife, aka a herder knife or a Philadelphia knife. I've had this for a number of years. It is a high quality reed knife with a large amount of curvature to the hollow ground portion. The other knife I'll be demonstrating on is a Karuji knife. This was a very inexpensive knife. It's advertised as hollow ground, but it's really a wedge-shaped knife. There's nothing hollow about it. It was only $30 and is probably never going to make it into my main lineup, but it is surprisingly good for a $30 knife. Neither of these knives is in my main scraping lineup right now, so they'll provide a good example of how I would start using a knife with the wedges and how I would choose which wedges to use for each side of the knife. To find the right angle for your knife, take a permanent marker and make a row of marks along the edge of your knife. The marks will provide a visual indicator that metal is being removed all the way to the edge of your knife, which is what you want. If the metal isn't being removed from the edge of the knife, your knife won't get sharp. I know this knife has to be sharpened on a fairly high angle just because of the geometry of it. So I'm going to start with the number 18 wedge. For the front of the knife, I use the small tab on the back of the knife, and I'm hoping that will provide me with just enough lift to sharpen the front side. I actually know that this angle is going to be too low from previous attempts, and you can see that the marks have not been removed all the way to the edge. Some marks remain right at the edge of the knife. That means that the angle is too low. So that was the 18 wedge. Let's go to the number 20. Still too low. 22. It's very close. I do think I can see a tiny sliver of black still remaining, so I'm going to use the 24. But this one won't take much. This is a soft knife, so I have to be very careful not to press at all, or it will bend instead of sharpening. That's going to do it. So I'm going to do one more pass here to make sure that I have cleaned the edge free of any nicks or dents. Great. It's already feeling a little bit grabbier. It might not feel grabbier at this stage, but that's a good sign. Clean off my stone. This diamond stone that I'm using does clog up very fast. I really like it because I can put my knife flat across the stone, but it does clog up fast. Okay, to do the back of the knife, I'm going to make a row of marks. Make sure those go all the way to the edge. And I'm going to start with the 18. So now I'm using the ramp to set my bevel angle for scraping. Too low. Close. One more. I'm going to clean the stone off and do it again. The marks are gone, and I can feel that I have a burr on the other side of the knife, which is making the knife feel dull. So now that that's happening, that means I'm getting all the way to the edge. So now I'll just do one pass again on each side. As you can see, there's no real requirement to use the same wedge for each side of the knife. So that's better. One more time. There's no real requirement to use the same wedge for each side of the knife. In fact, most knives won't use the same wedge for each side of the knife. So now that I've found, yeah, that's better. Now that I've found which wedges to use for this knife, next time I sharpen it, I will skip this step and just go straight to the ones that I want. Now I'm going to polish it up with a finer stone. And this won't take much, with a very light pressure, just to refine the burr a little bit. And I'm going to press just a little more when I draw the knife back. And that's a knife that I could scrape with. If I wanted to add this to my main lineup, I could do that now. So I went through a few steps with this knife, and I eventually settled on the 24 for the front of the knife and the 22 for the back. Next time I go to sharpen this knife, I will just start with those wedges right away, and I won't have to mess around with the marker. And next time I go to sharpen this knife, it will be a very fast process. Let's move on to my Albion knife. This is a hollow ground knife, and I think it's going to take a low angle. Looking at it previously, I can see that it's at some point I have sharpened this knife flat against the stone. So I'm going to start with sharpening it flat against the stone. Let's get some water. So it's going to be like this. But of course, let's mark it first. Let that dry off for a second. Okay. So I can see, looking at it right away, I can see two things. The marks are being removed in some of the knife, but this one is entirely remaining. So this edge is not perfectly straight. And also, it's not being removed all the way to the very edge, so I'm going to need to use one of the wedges. The number 12 wedge is the thinnest. This is about 1/4 of a millimeter. That might do it. That's going to do it. And now for the back, I'm going to start with the number 12. I think this will be too low, but let's do it for the purposes of demonstration. It's very hard to see because it's so small, but there's a tiny sliver of black ink remaining. So let's go to the 14. I think that's going to do it. So there's some little curves or dents in the edge, so I'm going to have to sharpen a little longer on this one. That's feeling sharp now. I could probably scrape with this as it is, but I will go to do a finer polish. Same angles. I think that's all it's going to need. Doesn't take much pressure for this step. And then a little more on the back. Yeah, that's ridiculously sharp. It's really grabby. So both of these knives are now very sharp. My next step would be to go and scrape a few reeds on each of them, resharpening it as needed as I worked, to see what it felt like to scrape with. As I make a few reeds with the knife, I may decide to raise the angle to the 16 or the 18 just to give something that's nice to work with. It might dig into the cane too much at a 14. And you can do that. That's actually the great thing about hollow ground knives, is that you can do that. What you can't do easily is to lower the angle. So you do think twice before you raise the angle. If I go up to the 16, I won't be able to go back down to the 14 without wearing away a lot of metal. That's part of why this knife is as worn down as it is, because I've changed the angle on it a few times. These knives have black ink on them now. It doesn't look so nice, but fortunately it comes off quite easily with an alcohol wipe. Next time I sharpen these knives, I'll be able to skip messing around with the permanent marker and just go straight to sharpening them on an angle that I know is going to work. Of course, if I need to redo this process, I can do so at any time. I hope you find this useful in getting your own knives consistently sharp and making some really great reeds. If you'd like to try the wedges for yourself, I'm making them available on my website at waldronreeds.com. They come in a set of 8, and it should cover the angles needed for most hollow ground and wedge-shaped knives. That's all I wanted to talk about today. So if you found this useful, please remember to click like or to subscribe for more content. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. That's all for today. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.